Hey everyone, it's Alex and welcome to this video. We're going to be discussing one of the best OTAs that's landed in some time in Marvel Snap. In fact, people have been begging for some major changes to the meta, and our last recent patches have not really shaken things up. But finally, we have an OTA, one of the best we've seen in a while, that's going to shake things up quite a bit, starting with Professor X. Although Professor X is a Series 1 card, it's running a 24% meta share, but it has been nerfed. While it got an extra power point, its ability is now drastically weaker, allowing cards that move to enter and leave its location. This means Nightcrawler, this means Nocturne, and anyone else can actually move in and out, whereas before it was basically just Jeff. It's also notable that according to the development team, a Goblin will be able to kind of go on to the other side as well. That movement switching sides should operate. So a major hit to Professor X, which I think had to happen. This lockdown style gameplay was frustrating many people, especially people that, I don't know, wanted to play cards. We used to joke that Leech, prevented you from playing the game. We used to joke how Leech was an anti-fun card. Professor X actually prevented you from playing cards, right? So it's kind of crazy how powerful this effect is. I mean, Professor X is iconic. It is a card that pretty much everyone has, so you hate to see it catch some flack, but also a good riddance at the same time. It has to take a timeout. And this is the second time it's gotten a timeout because if you don't forget that it was actually nerfed prior as well. And unfortunately, it's taking someone down with it. Cannonball is going to be losing a power point going from a 5.8 to a 5.7. It's very notable here that the synergy with Professor X is no longer, applicable because Professor X no longer prevents cards from moving in his location, so Cannonball would have hit them into the Professor X location anyways. However, it's worth noting that it still loses a power. They are stating that they're willing to give the power back. In my opinion, I think it's likely you see Cannonball back as a 5.8. I think it's catching a major stray. And with Professor X being completely neutered, it's very unlikely that Cannonball is going to be the meta menace that it has been lately. It's something that people have been clamoring for a while, a solution to Hela. As they've stated in the patch note here, they tried to do that with Leech. Leech was the release valve for Hela, but when they moved Leech to a 5-power card, 4-power card, they realized that hey, we might have overdone it. Leech was way more problematic than Hela ever was. So yes, you fix one problem, but you create a million others. And I think part of the problem is that even Leech at 5 cost doesn't solve the problem that most Hela decks, if not all Hela decks, run Corvus Glaive, which allows you to actively play Hela on turn 5 if you know that they have a Leech they're dropping on turn 5 in the Say of Conquest or in a competitive circumstance. Hela most recently won the Conquerors event as well, and it has showcased itself as one of the absolute best decks in the game. So instead of limiting how many cards it can discard, which I think has been suggested many times, it now reduces the power of each card discarded by 2. Some people might theorize, well, that just means you add, Luke Cage to the deck. I don't think Hela decks want Luke Cage. I think they're more likely just to kind of deal with the 2 power, right? Magneto's a 10, Giganto's a 12. Oh no, right? You know what I mean? These are still really chonky cards that might not care, but it does definitely take a lot off. This is a massive nerf to the likes of something like a Black Cat, whose whole point was to basically be an additional discarded card, right? And Black Cat's not really being played with the likes of Ghost Rider. So a couple shadow nerfs here, but the entire archetype, once again, is looking for a bit of a timeout. I think that's what the development team is targeting here. The win rate and the cube rate is lower and less problematic than that of the Professor X, and of course, its meta share is significantly lower, 3 times lower. But still, it seems as though the sentiment around the card needed it to have a little seat to the rear. Then we have the Ebony Blade. This was a surprise to me. Ebony Blade being changed from a text perspective. It can still not be destroyed, so Shang-Chi or locations cannot destroy it. However, its power can now be reduced, so this is a buff to something like a Shadow King. Shadow King will be able to reduce it all the way back to 0, so Shadow King, that's another card we can release at some point. The Shadow King's kind of ability to be relevant in this meta has only increased, because not only does it take out Angela, it takes out Thana, it takes out the Ebony Blade now. We are seeing much less Ebony Blade. Black Knight, which is what these stats are derivative of, is only running a 4% meta share. This is also a key nerf to Hela. Although not all Hela decks were running Black Knight, some were, and they were successful lists. And so the Ebony Blade now being susceptible to the likes of a Shadow King is a major change. I don't know if I like this one. I feel like Black Knight was fine. I think this is more of again, talking about strays, I think Black Knight hit a stray because of Hela, and I imagine this might be changed at some point in the future, but maybe not. Apparently, he's still too good. A 17% meta share. He's come down significantly since his peak 30% near release. making a couple adjustments here. Although it was an overall nerf, right? He still reveals in hand. He only gets +3 power versus the 4 prior. He does gain an additional energy from 9 to 10. Now, I would argue that's actually a nerf because he's Shang-Chiable right off the bat. Because if you think about it, there were often times where Red Hulk was sitting on the board as a 9 power card, and you had Shang-Chi in hand, and you couldn't play Shang-Chi because his effect would reveal at the end of the turn, so he would be like 13 power, and you'd be like, well, that sucks. But now he's Shang-Chiable prior, so a massive, massive nerf to Red Hulk. His power potential is obviously, his ceiling's way lower, far lower ceiling, but this 10 is a massive nerf because of the effect of Shang-Chi, okay? You might say it's 1 extra power, but not when Shang-Chi's out there. So Red Hulk getting a significant nerf. Then we go to Gilgamesh. This is actually wild, and this is, if I remember correctly, this must be the fastest buff to a Season Pass card in recent Marvel Snap history. In fact, I don't remember another Season Pass card that got buffed this fast. They certainly don't get nerfed that fast, but whoa, conspiracy? Anyways, so Gilgamesh, 5'7" to 5'9". That is a massive buff. 2 power? Are you kidding? That's huge, right? I think Gilgamesh is going to be legit. Now, definitely activated the Zoo archetypes. I thought Zoo was so good with Gilgamesh already. It was like one of the places where he really shined. Now, all of a sudden, it starts to make sense. Okay, if you just have Angela, Athena, and a couple other things, he might be a decent splash now, right? He had an only 7% meta share as a Season Pass card, which is wildly low, right? Insanely low, and they don't want that. Now, what I will say as well is Gilgamesh is also a very strong card for early pool players, beginning players. So I think this is actually not too bad to take a chance on making him a very relevant card, because people in Series 1 and 2 will be able to use this in like Zoo decks and kind of beginner series decks, because they'll have Blue Marvel, Kazar, and others, some of the major activators, even Angela, for instance. They might not have the Kitty Pride, that's a whole other conversation. But Gilgamesh is pretty accessible from a deck building standpoint for many different players. So I'm willing to give them kind of the benefit of the doubt here, giving them a big bump up in power might be good, and it might sell more Season Passes. Anyways, Captain America Series 1. You'll love to see these beginner cards getting buffed here. It's still just an ongoing 2/2, an ongoing card that gives +2, but now it's a 3/3. I like this, honestly. Now, in my experience, Captain America was actually really good in Cerebro too. I liked him. You'd play him with Cerebro, Mystique, and Iron Man, and he would buff that whole lane wildly, right? So they broke the C2 synergy, which really sucks. RIP C2. C2's still pretty decent, actually. But regardless, the ongoing Spectrum decks are pretty damn good, and I think Captain America is strong in those decks. So if you're playing some ongoing Spectrum, you're going to add Cap back in. I think he is definitely worth it. So I like these. These are nice changes to see just overall. You know, we need Cap being a relevant card in Marvel Snap. I still think he's a little too niche. Moving on to Shauna. And as they say in the patch note, yes, we're trying it again. Shauna has been changed from a 4 cost, buffed 4 cost, 3 cost, and now buffed 3 cost. 3/2, 3/4. This is a very significant buff in power. And with Gilgamesh getting buffed too, now there's a chance that Gilgamesh and Shauna together, like that's 4 power on the board now that wouldn't have existed otherwise. They should be synergistic. So, you know, I'm going to be building a Shauna and Gilgamesh deck. I'm going to be experimenting with that, and whether or not it's good, I guess, remains to be seen. But yeah, this had to happen. 41% win rate, like awful. 2% meta share, terrible. Like everything about Shauna has been awful for the longest time. And so it's good to see perhaps some additional experimentation with, I was going to say the Queen of the Jungle, but I'm not actually, it's Kazar's wife, maybe? I'm not, is she the Queen of the Jungle? I don't even know, man. Haven't gotten to that comic yet. And she wasn't in the X-Men series last time. Maybe she was. Did she cameo? Man, I don't even know. Stegron. Steggy. I love Steggy. This is a weird change. I don't know how I feel about it. Steggy is obviously irrelevant at a 0.5% play rate. But now he just moves cards to the right, so he's like Cannonball Claw, I guess. 4/7 is not bad power. I mean, Cannonball is now a 5/7, so I take that into consideration. But like moving one location to the right, does that mean that you like, okay, hear me out, you play Kingpin to the right, and now you have like, okay, I can Steggy to the right at least. I mean, that's not enough synergy, right? There's no way that works. We'll have to see. I still think Steggy's useless. I don't see him being played. I don't think this is enough. This feels like the M'Baku change, where they changed the text on a little bit. Hey, we did something, and then everyone's like, M'Baku still sucks, bro. But at least he got an additional power here. 4/7 is still weak, though. It's still low. I mean, you can play Crossbones. Now, Crossbones are actually making decks right now, by the way, with Scar and stuff like that. So, I don't know, Staggy might need a little more help than that. But regardless, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate if you join our wonderful community. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next Marvel Snap video.